What's going on, everybody? How y'all doing? This is your brother Shabazz coming to you live, trying to do what they call that simulcast thing. So, what's going on, everybody? This is your brother Shabazz coming to you live on multiple channels, coming to you live on YouTube and on TikTok, hopefully. So, I'm gonna try to do this thing again. We're gonna try to start all over. Take it from the top, is what they say. Peace to all the positive people in the universe. What's good, Richard, Virginia? Hotep to the Pan African Black world. And if I didn't catch you, none of those phrases fit you, then maybe you're one of those brothers or sisters that pay attention so much so that you know how to look beyond the smoke and mirrors. Now, as I said, we're gonna be talking about the 6-7 craze tonight. And what we're gonna be talking about is it's not demonic. I know you may have seen the views, you may have seen the videos where you got people talking about it's demonic. And we need to talk about this. It's what they call moral panic. And yeah, it's sweeping through at least some communities. You got Christians coming online talking about it. You got Muslims coming online talking about it. Kids are saying 6-7, and adults are losing their minds. Let me keep it nice. They claim it's demonic. They claim it's summoning spirits. And they say that the schools need to ban it. They're telling parents, stop your kids from saying it. Here's one of the funny things. 6-7 is supposed to be so demonic. It's supposed to be summoning spirits. But ain't no spirit showed up nowhere. So I'm like, okay, nobody was screaming 6-7 when the lone gunman walked into the school and blasted off. You could say that was some demonic energy, but 6-7 ain't had nothing to do with that. Hell, by all accounts, that was a Christian that did that. It's almost always a Christian doing that. And even on the Muslim side, nobody was yelling 6-7 when they started when they took over airplanes and flew them in places that weren't supposed to get flown in. But nobody want to call that demonic. Well, you know. So, but what we're gonna be talking about tonight is what is 6-7, what it actually is, why this panic is happening, the racist roots of calling African spirituality demonic. Because that's really what it is. That's really what it boils down to. Now, hopefully, if we get far enough, yesterday when I tried to broach this topic, I got interrupted. Whole stream had to get canceled or whatnot, so to speak. But we'll also talk a little bit about how to respond to this spreading fear. So let's get into it. 6-7, if you don't know, it's contemporary slang. The youngins, the kids is loving it. Popularized primarily through hip hop culture. Artists like now if I get his name wrong, excuse me, please forgive me. I'm not that much of a follower of this particular type of hip hop, but I think his name is either Skilla or Skrilla Baby, something like that, from Detroit. Now, by all accounts, the 6-7 phrase just mean very generic things like it's cool, it's excellent, it's exceptional. The same way people say, oh, that's fire. The same way we used to say that's dope. Some people say, oh, it slaps. Oh, it's bussing. That's all it is. There's no demonic energy to it whatsoever. But again, you got people moral panicking. You got Christians losing their mind. You got Muslims losing their minds. But when you start to go digging, it really just boils down to what the linguists, the specialists who study languages, they just call it adolescent slang innovation. Now, okay, if you are, for instance, a member of a certain type of Muslim community and you think innovation is bad, then, forgive me, but it ain't. Young people create and adopt language to establish their own group identity, to distinguish themselves from adults. That's all it is. That's all it is. So you got now there are researchers just actually looking into this stuff. Dr. Penelope Eckert, a Stanford linguist who studies youth language. And she's documented this process extensively. In her work on linguistic variation and social meaning, she shows that youth slang serves social functions, not spiritual functions, not religious functions. but social functions. It helps build solidarity, it marks coolness, it creates generational boundaries. That's all it is. So that's all the phrase is. Is the phrase is no more demonic than anything else that has come out of youth culture or hip hop culture. There's zero credible evidence that 6-7 is a phrase used in any form of African spiritual tradition. It's not used in Santería. It's not used in Palo Mayombe. It's not used in Vodou. It's not used in Candomblé. It's not used in Ifa, Isese, or Denani. It's not used in Hoodoo. There's nothing. So for people to get up and just start spreading lies and falsehoods and so on and so forth, it really speaks to something deeper going on because it's not connected to any specific religious practice whatsoever. It's just slang. That's all it is. Now, so the question is, if it is just slang, well, how come people swear that it's something else? Now, shout out to anybody and everybody listening. Shout out to anybody and everybody joining in, whether you're in the chat room on YouTube, whether you're listening on TikTok. Appreciate your presence here. I really would appreciate it if you're on TikTok and you came over to YouTube. That would help me immensely. But anyhow, so the question becomes, why is this panic happening? Because here's the thing: we've seen this exact same panic before, many times, and scholars have documented the pattern time and time again. Now, I don't know if you knew this, but back in the 1920s and 30s, even jazz music was called demonic. They called it the devil's music. They accused it of corrupting youth, promoting immorality. Now, as hard as that may seem to believe, just think about that. Jazz music, nothing but music, no lyrics, just straight, pure melodies. And some people said, oh my God, don't let your children listen to that. It's summoning devils. So if you can be as deranged in the mind as to think that playing a trumpet is summoning a demon, well, yeah, I guess you should very well be expected to think that a phrase like 6-7 would do the same thing. But that was in the 30s. And you had white religious leaders at that time picking up the mantle or taking the mantle, running with the baton, so to speak. They claimed it was connected to African voodoo. As if, like, if it were connected to African voodoo, that wouldn't make it wrong. That wouldn't make it bad. That wouldn't make it harmful. That wouldn't make it demonic. But the fact is, it wasn't connected to voodoo. And there's nothing bad, wrong, harmful, or demonic about voodoo. They thought it was going to destroy civilization. That was back in the 1920s and 30s. And here we are in 2025 without a civilization having been destroyed, at least not based upon jazz music. If the civilization is destroyed, then you can look to maybe perhaps some Republicans and some good for nothing Democrats. But that was in the 20s and 30s. Even in, you jump fast forward from that in the rock and roll, you know, the music that was started by black people and then co-opted by white folks. And I'm not here to look, you will never get me celebrating, you will never get me bigging up Elvis Presley. He was nothing but a tomb robber, if you ask me. But aside from that, they even called him demonic. And we all know he is looked at as like the ultimate icon of white rock music. But they called him demonic. His music was banned in certain places. Religious groups claimed he was Satan's tool. So again, perhaps, like, you know, as you think about it, it's like, well, if they're going to call their own people demonic for something as silly as, well, you could say it was demonic. It was demon-like to be stealing other black people's music and making money off it for yourself, but that ain't the kind of demonic energy that we talking about. In the 80s and 90s, hip hop emerged. Moral panic mongers came stomping down the carpets again. And so when people had phrases and expressions like "that's dope," here they come. That's promoting drug use. You're getting kids addicted to drugs with that. Stay away from it. When in reality, dope just meant cool. It just meant excellent. It's just reclaiming slang or creating slang. Kids weren't promoting heroin. They were saying something was good. Now, if that don't sound familiar to you, okay, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe, maybe you are on the other side of the generation that I come from. But in all actuality, the same playbook, different decade. Hip hop from the 1980s onward constantly was demonized, blamed for violence, blamed for moral decay, and spiritual corruption. But did you know, even like this moral outrage, this satanic panic, they even extended it to Dungeons and Dragons back in the 1980s. And I'm like, a board game? They claimed the board game was literally summoning demons and causing teen suicides. Now, again, I gotta say, the craziest, the strangest thing about this whole thing is for them to continue saying it's summoning demons. Now I'm sitting here, and I did this yesterday. I'm sitting here right now, 6'7", 6'7", 6'7", 6'7", 6'7", 6'7". How many times do you have to say 6'7" before the demons come? That's my question. Because I've said it. The kids be saying it. No demons have shown up at any of the schools where the kids are saying it. Ogun, not a demon, has not shown up on screen, on camera, behind me because I'm saying it. Yimiya is not shown up yet. But the moral panic. Now, again, I'll give you a couple of other names. There's a book called Folk Devils and Moral Panics, written in 1972 or published in 1972. And in that book, the author Stanley Cohen, a renowned sociologist, he identifies key features: a condition, an episode, a person, or a group becomes defined as a threat to social values. Almost sound like racial profiling, if you ask me. The media presents the threat in a stylized and stereotypical fashion. Moral entrepreneurs, religious leaders, commentators, they all jump on the bandwagon to build concern. Then they start bringing in experts or so-called experts. A lot of times it's pseudo folk. And they pronounce diagnoses. And then, but here's the thing. At the end of this merry-go-round of malarkey, the condition disappears or subsides, only to resurface again later when people find out there's a new phrase in town. So here's the question: why youth culture gets targeted? Well, I will have you know, there's an anthropologist by the name of I'm sorry, I'm gonna get this name wrong. Dick Hebdige. There's an anthropologist by the name of Dick Hebdige in a work entitled Subculture: The Meaning of Style. In 1979, he explains that youth subcultures are perceived as threatening because they challenge established norms and they challenge adult authority. That's the key and the cornerstone of it. They challenge adult authority. Parents don't like not knowing. They don't want to be outside the loop. So when that youth culture is also tied to Black communities, now we got a real problem. The panic intensifies due to existing racial prejudice. And that's what we really gonna get to. We get into the bag now. Because there's a pattern for this too. Young people adopt new cultural expressions. So especially when those young people are not Black, and they start adopting expressions that come from the Black. Well, y'all know the lily white pearl clutchers don't like that. Adults don't understand it. And then often, for almost all the time, it gets falsely connected to something exotic and foreign. Religious authorities declare it dangerous. And so there goes the panic. And eventually, now maybe this is supposed to be the silver lining in it. Eventually, everyone moves on. But but the damage has already been done. Black culture, Black spirituality, African spirituality has taken yet one more hit. And then it'll be repeated again with the next generation. This is literally what we are watching history repeat itself with this whole 6-7 phrase. And so we come to this thing, the racist roots of demonizing African spirituality. Now, again, I'm going to pause because I'm going to play one of the clips. Now, unfortunately for my TikTok audience, you might not be able to hear or see the clip. But if you come over to youtube.com/@theproperperspective, and the @ is the sign, not the words AT. But if you come on over here, then you can see it when I pull it up on the screen. But just so that you are fully aware, I want the audience to hear some of this garbage. So let me pull this up and make sure the volume is working.
Six, seven is demonic.
So I'm gonna play this clip, and you can. So yeah, you can see him, you can hear him saying 6-7 is demonic.
No, that means nothing.
And even the child is like, no, it don't mean nothing. You know what they say, out of the mouths of babes. So again, so I'm gonna let the clip play a little bit.
6-7, a meme kids can't get enough of and teachers can't get away from.
We are not saying the word 6-7 anymore.
Some schools even banning the phrase in classrooms.
You are no longer allowed to say, what number do you think I'm going to say?
6-7.
Every day.
The trend took off a few months ago, but has re-intensified with school back in session. Thought to originate from a rap song by Skrilla. Experts we spoke to say the numbers really don't mean anything.
It's like slang to make parents be like, what does that mean?
6-7 is a demonic chant that you guys have your kids involved with, and if your kids are doing it, you need to stop them right now.
Yeah, I'm going. So y'all hear the bullshit. Let me take this off the stage. Get back on full screen. All right. So y'all hear the mess, right? Y'all heard the mess. You seen it. Don't say I'm making it up. They actually are pushing and promoting this mess. He says it's demonic. And so this is what we come into. So much for the idea of religious tolerance. So the question is that what are the racist roots of demonizing African spirituality? Because he says it's demonic, and as his video continues, he's connecting it to Santería because of Skrilla. Now, I'm not saying that Skrilla is not a practitioner of an African spiritual practice. I'm not that much a follower of Skrilla, but in the video, they do appear to have him, and he is proclaiming it. That's not a problem. That's not an issue whatsoever, because there's absolutely nothing wrong with any African spiritual tradition. But the elephant in the room is why are African and Afro-diasporic spiritual practices always deemed demonic? Now, there's a historical context to this. During the transatlantic slave trade, during colonialism and neocolonialism, the whole colonization process of the continent of Africa, it was the European Christians who encountered African religious systems that they were woefully ill prepared to understand. And in their own putrefied ignorance, rather than engage with these sophistical theological and philosophical systems, because that's what African spirituality is, no matter which one you happen to be observing or participating in practicing. It is a sophisticated theological and philosophical system on par with the Abrahamics. But all they could do was label them primitive, savage, and demonic. And then they passed that ignorant framing on down. They instilled it into every generation of their own folk, and they instilled it into every generation of our people. And our people picked it up and leapt onto it. Now, I got a scholar for you, Dr. Malefikete Asante, a scholar of African American studies. He documents in a work called The Afrocentric Idea. It was published in 1987. He documents how European colonizers systematically demonized African spirituality to justify enslavement and colonization. There is no way they could have been as successful in colonizing the continent and enslaving those that they stole if they didn't cut them off from the root of their spirituality. Because the idea was, if Africans were devil worshippers, then enslaving them was actually saving their souls. And they've been promoting that ever since. And this is from whence the whole idea, the idea that, I don't care if you're focusing on the 6-7 or not, but the idea that African spirituality is demonic comes from this European understanding, lens, interpretation of the books many of our people hold so dear. Now, I'm not here to bash you if you're a Christian. I'm not here to bash you if you're a Muslim. I wouldn't even bash you if you were a Black Hebrew Israelite. But if you use your particular book, if you use your particular religion to look down at, to cast aspersions at, to call African spirituality in any of its forms, fashions, and manifestations demonic, we can get to bashing. We can get to bashing. So I'm trying to pause because there's going to be a couple of interruptions coming through in a hot second. But let me move on, because here's the question, because what I really wanted to delve into, we're going to look at the traditions. We're going to look at some of what these traditions actually represent and what they actually stand for. As I say, my position is they're nowhere near, they're nothing to do with demonism, demonic nothing. So you got Santería and Lukumi, or Lukumi. They are syncretic religions combining Yoruba beliefs from West Africa with Catholicism, developed by enslaved Africans in Cuba as a way to preserve their traditions while surviving forced conversion. It involves veneration of the Orishas, divine beings, no doubt. Demons? Hell no. The Orishas are not demons. So later on in this guy's video, he says, Ogun is a demon. Yemoja is a demon. No, they ain't. And I keep trying to say, just as a practical example, 6-7, 6-7, 6-7, 6-7, where they at? Where are the demons? They have not shown up. So again, Santería is one. Palo Mayombe, a Congo-derived tradition, also based in modern-day Cuba, involves work with spirits of the dead and natural forces. But that doesn't make it demonic. If you are a Christian, you are working with spirits of the dead and natural forces. If you are a Muslim, you are working with spirits of the dead and natural forces. So whether we're talking about Santería, Palo Mayombe, even in Vodou. Now, Vodou is a Haitian religion combining West African Vodun traditions with Catholicism, involving service to the spirits. And in the Vodun tradition, they call them Elwa. and holding or hosting or participating in community ceremonies. Even in Brazil, you got candomblé, a tradition preserving Yoruba religious practices. So these West African traditions, we brought them over here when they first enslaved, when they kidnapped and stole and tricked and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we ended up over here, whether it be in the contiguous 48 of the United States and Uncle Sam, whether it be in the Caribbean or in the South American countries. All of the Americas got populated with enslaved Africans who had their own traditional African spiritual practices. None of them were demonic. They are legitimate religious traditions. They have complex theology. They have ethics. They have morals. They have community practices. Now, you ain't got to believe me. There's an anthropologist by the name of Karen McCarthy Brown. And she wrote a work called Mama Lola, a voodoo priest in Brooklyn. This was back in 1991. She provides an ethnographic account showing voodoo's spiritual moral framework and healing practice. Now, the problem, when people call these traditions demonic, they're perpetuating colonial era racism. They're saying African spirituality is evil, but our religion is good. And this is the exact same thing that this dude is saying in his video. Stop you children from saying it. It's demonic. You need to give them the Bible. Religious studies scholar Joseph M. Murphy writes in Santería, African Spirits in America, that the demonization of African religious practices in the Americas has been a tool of cultural suppression and white supremacy, because there's always a double standard. They always like to point and see, that's a ritual, that's demonic. But Christians use candles, light them up as part of their worshiping process and procedure. That's a ritual. But Christians call it sacred. But when a Santería practitioner uses candles, it's demonic. There are groups, there are positions, or not positions, there are branches of Christianity that call on the saints for intercession. That's considered holy. But when Yoruba descendants venerate their orishas, that's devil worship. Christians use holy water and incense. Incense. That's blessed. That's a blessed practice. But if a Apollo practitioner uses those same elements, witchcraft. This has nothing to do with theology and everything to do with racism. Otherism. If you don't like the word racism, then check out the word otherism. And shout out to the Rastas for always trying to break us down and letting everybody know that the ism schism is the problem. Otherism is another one. Now, at first, I thought that this was just something, related to Christian panic. And I would still be just as hot and bothered if it was. But once I found out that even the Muslims are jumping on board, I'm like, oh my God. So I'm sure eventually somebody gonna send me another video where there'll be some Hebrews or some Jews trying to jump on the same bandwagon. Yeah, I'm gonna play this next clip just for the for the YouTube audience, youtube.com/@theproperperspective, for the YouTube audience, to make sure y'all recognize and realize I ain't making this up. Let me pull this up and share it on the screen so you can see it. So you see what we're getting ready to listen to.
I've been saying these numbers because of a viral. Ready.
Here we go.
6, 7. Your kids have been saying these numbers because of a viral meme right now. But if you ask them what it means, they'll say nothing. Ugan, the demonic spirit of iron. with the sacred number of 6. Yamuja, the goddess of the ocean, with the sacred number of 7. 6, 7. Devil worship disguised as a trend.
So you see, you hear, at least I hope you did on TikTok. I know if you're on YouTube, you can see it and hear it. Let me come back to the big stage. So you heard what he said. Now, and the funny thing is like they offer no proof. They just say it. So according to him, Ogun is a demon. Why? Because he's connected to the number 6. Well, can you show me where in the world, when in the world did the number 6 become demonic? According to who? Is there a biblical passage that says, 6 is demon? Is there a biblical passage that says 7 means demon? Is there a Quranic passage that says 6 is demon? Is there a Quranic passage that says 7 is demon? No, but because he wants to say it, it's supposed to be true. And then again, the hilarity of it all, you making this video trying to impress upon people that Ogun and Yemiya or Yemoja are demons, and your children shouldn't be saying it. And in your own video, you got your kids saying it. If this ain't stupid, what is? If it's that dastardly, why would you have your children saying it just for the sake of the video? In that respect, his video is worse than the Christian. At least the Christian dude is like, he's just piecing together clips from other kids. He's not having his own children say it. They're both stupidly wrong. I'm fumbling over a few words because I'm trying not to curse and swear and stuff like that. But so why are Muslims joining this panic? That's the topic. That's the subject of this next segment. It's very disappointing to me. Yeah, I must admit, if I had to choose a religion other than an African one, I might, lean a little bit more towards Islam than the one that was brought to our ancestors on the slave boats, like the good ship Jesus. So it's disappointing to me, although because I have been, in observation of Islam for some time, it's not entirely surprising to me that some Muslims are parroting these claims, and it does not go unnoticed by me, the kind of Muslim who's in the video. But let's be clear about a few things, because there's some irony here that really, makes me want to clutch my own pearls. Islam itself has been demonized in the West using the exact same playbook. So I think that's the part that really gets to me. As a Muslim, you should at least have the mentality, the understanding, and the perception that a Christian world really likes to dig in and point fingers and call anything non-Christian demonic. So as a Muslim, you should have a little bit more of an open mind because it's happened to you. But again, I'm also reminded that as widely disparate as Islam is technically seen in a Christian world, they are both Abrahamic religions. They have the same root. So a lot of times they have the same thought process. They just express themselves differently. But Islam has been called foreign and dangerous. And now he's picking up the mantle and calling an African spiritual practice foreign and dangerous. Islam is accused of promoting violence and even being demonic at times. Other Christians or branches of Christianity have labeled Islam as barbaric. And they look at the youth who embrace Islam and they look at them like they're a threat. So again, it's very disheartening for a Muslim to get online and say, yeah, well, I might be good, but them African traditional people, they the real demons. So Muslims joining in on demonizing other spiritual traditions. Assalamu alaikum to you if you are a Muslim. But you guys should at least recognize that they're using the same tools on African spiritual practices that they used on you. And you should be standing up against it, not jumping on the bandwagon. And like I said, will somebody please tell me if you really think it's that daggone demonic, why you got your children saying it to prove it's demonic? How is that? The only way it would have proved, you could have proven that it was demonic by having your children say it, is if the demons manifested themselves in your video. Then you could have said, see, don't let this happen to your babies. But okay, that's my personal soapbox. Let's delve deeper. From an Islamic theological standpoint, now there may be some legitimate reasons a Muslim might avoid practices from other faith traditions. I'm not saying that you have to join in and participate, but that's between them and Allah. But there's a huge difference between this practice conflicts with my faith, so I won't participate, and this slang phrase teenagers are using is summoning demons, and the demons are African, and it all must be banned. Now, if you just simply say it don't align with my faith and I'm not going to do it, okay, cool. We can agree to disagree and keep it moving. That's religious conviction. But the other thing that you're doing, that's panic mongering. That's fear mongering. That's denigrating an African practice. Now, there's a scholar by the name of Carolyn Rouse, and there's a work of hers entitled Engaged Surrender. Engaged Surrender. African American Women and Islam. And this was published in 2004. Shows how African American Muslims navigate cultural expressions while maintaining Islamic practice. It is very much possible to be a Muslim. It's possible to be a Christian, an open-minded one, on either side of those, and still have a positive view towards African spiritual traditions, and still not look at African spiritual traditions as demonic. Now, I know it may be few and far between when you encounter such, but I have hope. Now, the key insight in Rouse's work is you can maintain religious boundaries without demonizing other people's cultures. At least that should be the goal. You should be able to do that. But let's be crystal clear. There's no credible source that links 6-7 to any religious ritual or practice at all, let alone an African one. It's not, like I said at the top, it's not connected to Santería, Palo, Voodoo. It's not connected to Hoodoo. It's not connected to Kemetic writings and teachings. If anything, so here's a flip. Why not say like there's something demonic about 6-7 because of the number of days it took God to build the world, to create the world. He had to rest on 7. So that means, when God had to rest, that means the demons took over. There's your biblical demons, and it ain't Ogun and it ain't Yemoja. Now, yeah, you got a song out here, the artist Skrilla, and the song is I'm gonna get this wrong, I'm pretty sure. Whatever his song is, Doot Doot, Skrilla Doot Doot. Now, he may be using spiritual imagery in his own aesthetic, in his own music. Many artists do that. This is no different than when Beyonce came out with the African images in her video, and all the Christians jumped up and down and started saying it's demons. It wasn't. But whatever Skrilla is doing with his video, that doesn't make 6-7 as slang demonic. That doesn't make Ogun and Yemoja demonic. Even if there were spiritual references in the music, artistic reference is not the same as religious practice. Nobody thinks listening to Gregorian chants makes you a monk. I mean, unless I don't think anybody would. So if you can listen to a Gregorian chant and you're not a monk, then you can listen to 6-7 and you're not a demon worshiper or summoner. Now, aside from all of that, summoning demons is not how African spiritual traditions work. So again, at the root and at the core of this whole stupid, panic mongering, fear mongering, denigration of African spirituality, what is being revealed is a profound ignorance about what these practices actually involve. All African spiritual traditions are about community, healing, honoring ancestors, and connecting with the divine. None of it has anything to do with any of the Hollywood horror movie nonsense that you've been feeding yourself. And kids are saying 6-7, 6-7, 6-7, not because they're trying to practice any religion, but because they think it's cool. Now, before I get up out of here, I just want to say, because this is another point that I want to, now I'm going to draw down a little bit more on the Muslim brother, because I'm a little extra offended at the Muslim. So let me get this straight. This phrase is so powerful. The phrase is so powerful. It summons demons, is what they're saying. So now schools want to ban it. Parents are having emergency prayer sessions. Kids need to repent and renounce. It's being described as a demonic chant. It's being connected to Ogun and Yemiya. But when these adults say it on camera, nothing happens. When I say it all throughout this broadcast, nothing happens. 6-7, 6-7, 6-7, 6-7, 6-7, 6-7. Where the demons? Now, I'm particularly a little bit extra upset that the Muslim couldn't even get their names right. Because I know daggone well a Muslim would be mad as Spitfire if I called him a Muslim. A Muslim would be mad as Spitfire if I was to say, ain't you them people that believe in Allah? So put some respect on African traditional practices. Put some respect on their names. It's Ogun, not Agin, or whatever it was that he said. But again, we can say it as often as we want. We ain't going to have no visualization of a ghost. Ain't no goblins coming. Ain't no demons appearing. Ain't no chaos. You would be blessed if Ogun showed up, but he wouldn't be scared because he don't look like no demon. You would be blessed if Yemoja showed up, but you wouldn't be scared because she don't look like no demon. Ain't no spooky manifestations. The Orishas ain't even appearing, but if they did, you would be welcomed. You would be blessed. You would be pleased. You'd be smiling. You wouldn't be terrified. The cameras are rolling 6-7, 6-7, 6-7, 6-7, and I still don't see nothing. It's the whole thing is absurd. It's absurdity gone after mayhem. According to their logic, when a kid says 6-7 at recess, demons are summoned. The only demons being summoned is the sugar demons with all of the garbage that your kids might be eating. Either at your hands or at the schools, because the whole culinary system is demonic. You can say that. When an adult says 6-7 in a warning video, everything's fine and copacetic. Ain't no spiritual consequences. He can TikTok dance his way all over the place saying 6'7" is a demon, but ain't no demons coming after his TikTok page. Ain't been no teachers, ain't been no principals, ain't been no school personnel saying you got to get the kids to yell 6'7" again and Ogun screwed up the bathroom. No, none of that is happening. It's almost as if the words 6'7" are just words. So again, I'm gonna calm myself on down. But let me say this: if you can't pronounce the names of the spiritual entities you claim are being summoned, maybe, just maybe, you don't actually know what you're talking about. So here's a simple test for anyone claiming 6'7" summons demons. Say it right now. I've said it multiple times while I'm live. Nothing has happened to me. Are you scared to say it? It isn't even funny. It reveals the complete lack of logic in the claim. If it was actually dangerous, these adults wouldn't be casually saying it in their videos. If it was actually summoning spirits, surely we'd have some evidence by now. Because kids been saying it for months and not one demon sighting. We've had more realistic interpretations of something in the sky being a UFO. Now, if they actually understood African spiritual traditions, they would know that's not how any of this works. That's not how it works. That's not how any of it works. Now, there's a religious studies scholar by the name of Tanya Luhrmann who studies religious experiences. In her work, When God Talks Back, why don't you go read that one? And in that, she notes that genuine religious practitioners understand. Genuine religious practitioners, not clowns trying to get TikTok followers. Genuine religious practitioners understand that spiritual practices require intention, context, training, and specific ritual conditions. You don't accidentally summon Beelzebub just by saying the name. And if you want to be so concerned about a demon, why ain't you looking out for the demons that's written in your text? 6'7" ain't connected to Beelzebub or Lucifer. That's not how spirituality works. Whether you're looking at African traditions, Christianity, Muslim traditions, Hinduism, or Buddhism, that's just not how it works. Now, before we get to, I did say I was going to try to cover how should you respond to this garbage. But before we get there, how about we do an exercise in empathy? How about that? For Christians, imagine if someone were to describe communion. Y'all know the Eucharist. Imagine if someone were to say, Christians perform ritualistic cannibalism where they eat human flesh and drink human blood. Clutch the pearls. They even chant in unison while consuming the body parts. This sounds awfully demonic to me. The priest performs incantations over bread and wine to transform them. That's magic. That's demonic. This is clearly a demonic blood and magic ritual. Now, I'm sure if someone were to get on TikTok and say, stay away from the church because they perform in mass blood magic rituals to summon demons, you would be outraged. You would say, y'all just don't understand. That's our sacred symbolism. That's the body and the blood of Christ. You're twisting our theology. You're being deliberately disrespectful. Oh, you don't say. Well, that's exactly what you're doing to African spirituality when you say Ogun is a demon, when you say Yemoja is a demon. I got one better for you. I'm gonna leave Christians alone for a second. Let me holler at the Muslims. Imagine if someone were to describe tawaf this way. Now, okay, if you're not a Muslim, tawaf is circumambulating the Kaaba. So imagine if someone were to say, Muslims perform ritualistic circling around a black stone 7 times. Ooh, that go that 7. They're clearly worshiping a rock. This is pagan idol worship disguised as monotheism. I told y'all. The number 7 and the black stone? Obviously, this is occult symbolism. Muslims would lose their. But you'd be right. You would be just in your feeling of I'm being disrespected. You would say you're completely misunderstanding our practice. The Kaaba represents the house of. Now, just because the other dudes purposely said their names wrong, you're completely the Kaaba represents the house of Allah. This is sacred worship. This is not idol worship. You're being ignorant and Islamophobic. Mm-hmm. So what you think you being into African spirituality? Or imagine describing the Muslim prayer Salah. Muslims bow down and put their foreheads on the ground 5 times a day. They recite chants in foreign languages. Most of them don't even understand. They face a specific direction determined by occult calculations. Clearly, these are demonic submission rituals. It's offensive, isn't it? Because you as a Muslim, you understand the context of your religion and culture. You understand the meaning. You understand the sacred intent behind Salah. But that's the point. You as a practitioner hold your practices dear. And you want other people to respect your practices. But then you turn around and make a video calling somebody else's practices demonic when you don't know jack about them. Now, let me hit you with a little bit more scholasticism. Religious studies scholar Jonathan Z. Smith in Imagining Religion from Babylon to Jonestown. Y'all know about Jonestown, right? Don't drink the Kool-Aid. He explains this whole phenomenon, and he uses that word I said earlier, the rhetoric of othering. The rhetoric of othering. That's that word. Let me double check on something. Oh, no, I'm good. I'm clear. All right. So the rhetoric of othering. When we describe our own religious practices, we use respectful insider language, sacred communion, holy prayer, blessed ritual, divine worship. When we describe other people's religious practices, hostile outsiders, demonic language, cannibalistic ritual, occult chanting, pagan idolatry. When in all actuality, both religious practices are using almost the same types of actions. Christians honor the dead. African spirituality honors the dead. Islam honors the dead. Now, Smith argues that religious practice can be made to sound sinister when described by a hostile outsider using decontextualized language. It's just purely that. It's propaganda. There's supposed to be a golden rule of religious respect. Christians, if you wouldn't want someone calling communion cannibalism, then don't call Santería offerings devil worship. Muslims, if you wouldn't want someone calling Salah occult submission rituals, don't call working with the Orishas demon summoning. The respectful thing is to say, it's not my religious tradition. I don't practice that. And keep it moving. But jumping up and down and getting online talking about it's demonic and everyone who does it is cursed. When you point one finger out, you're pointing three back at yourself. Now, this last thing before I get up out of here. I may have already covered it. I may have already said it. And again, let me see. Shout out to anybody and everybody that's listening or still stay tuned. I openly admit I'm not too good with TikTok. Like I haven't been able to get TikTok like on the screen. So shout out to everybody. I can hardly see your names. Shout out to Jim. Shout out to Jorge Corazon or Tanya Grisel, Quentin Cannon, Nessa, and so on and so forth. I really wish I need to figure out a way to get the screen bigger so I can see everybody's names. It's very hard for me to see it. Shout out to BB Boo, Bradley, John, Hall, Sanchez. Appreciate you listening and staying in tune. But this okay, let me get this last little thing because they like to cut you off. All right, still live. So how to respond? I said I was going to try to cover this. When someone comes to you with this panic, here's what you say. For the concerned parent, and I had people send me these videos. So for the concerned parent, you could say something like this. I understand you're worried about your kids being exposed to something that you don't understand. But 6-7 is just slang. You can believe your children. Children have a habit of telling the truth, especially when they don't think there's anything wrong. Now, if they know they did something wrong, they may try to dodge the bullet. But when they really feel like there's nothing, no trouble coming down the pike, they tell you the truth. They say, well, it's just some words that we saying. It's just slang. Now you can say it means cool or excellent. It's just something cool to say. It's not religious. It's not dangerous. It's just how young people talk. Hell, Run DMC said not bad meaning bad, but bad meaning good. It's just words. You can flip the meaning, but you can't turn a phrase into a demonic ritual. Every generation has its own expressions. Now, I'm sure, I don't know how old you is or whatnot, but I'm sure in whatever generation you land in, there had to have been some words or phrases in your generation, some music or musicians in your generation that everybody swore was demon hunting, demon summoning. And look at you now. You still survived. You didn't go get addicted to dope because you were saying stuff is dope all the time. Now, for the religious person, I'm trying to respect your faith. But this panic is not based on facts. There's no evidence this phrase is connected to any religious practice. They're just outright lying. Now, even if an artist references African spirituality in their work, as Beyonce has done, back in the day, favorite rap group, X-Clan, they did it all the time. But that doesn't make the images or the slang religious. It doesn't make it demonic. African spiritual traditions simply are not demonic. It's pure hogwash. It's pig slop. Stemming from the colonial area mind control, tricks and traps of white supremacists. Now, we can maintain our own individual faiths without demonizing other people's faiths or other people's cultures. Now, particularly, for an educator or an administrator, Banning slang doesn't stop kids from using it. It just makes them hide it and distrust authority. Now, unless it would be different if it was a racial slur, or not even, if it was some kind of a slur, if it was a threat. But trying to police youth language is counterproductive. Now, you could take that opportunity to create a teaching moment about cultural understanding, not a moment of punishment. But that's on you. It's your school, it's your classroom, et cetera, et cetera. But be better. How about that? Be better. Let's all just be honest about what's going on here. It's the same moral panic that we saw with jazz, with rock, with hip hop, and everything else connected to Black youth culture. It's rooted in racism and fear of what we don't understand. So instead, maybe, just maybe, instead of panic, how about we educate ourselves about where these fears actually come from? 6'7" is not demonic. And I'm going to keep on saying it. 6'7", 6'7", 6'7", 6'7". 6'7". 6'7". Where they at? Where the demons? I ain't summoned nothing by saying 6'7". It's not connected to any religious ritual. It's just slang. The real danger here isn't the phrase. It's the prejudice, the racism, the fear mongering that labels anything connected to African culture as evil. Now, we should be able to do better. We should be able to be better. Hopefully, if anything that I've said resonates, then we can educate ourselves. We can stop repeating colonial era racism dressed up as religious concern. And how about just letting kids be kids without projecting your fear onto their language? Now, like I said, that's my soapbox. Like, share, and subscribe is the name of the game. I appreciate anybody that has paid attention thus far. We put puzzle pieces together and we look beyond the smoke and mirrors. Now, y'all know, whether you're on TikTok or YouTube, y'all know the algorithm is the gatekeeper. So it would really help me if you hit those buttons, hit all the buttons, the like button, the subscribe button, the share button. Share this with somebody else. It don't even cost you nothing. Now, if you're picking up what I'm putting down, share this with somebody, tell a friend to tell another friend, and keep the trolls off my comment line. Actually, not take that back. Keep the trolls coming, because the algorithm rewards engagement. Now, if you're on YouTube, I'm going to try to put these scholars, mess that up. I'm going to try to put these scholars into the chat. Let's see. Can I find the chat? Can I find the chat? Maybe not. That is not. Okay, here we go. So I'll put those into the chat room. I'm going to put all of the scholars into the chat room, and they will be in my description sections. If you wanted to look anybody up, then you can come over to youtube.com/@theproperperspective. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, this is Shabazz, your brother Shabazz, sometimes Professor Shabazz. Appreciate you listening. And with that, I'm going to get on up out of here. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. So let me end that. And now we're going to end this one. Peace.